Live from Snoopy's Doghouse, this is Derailed Trains of Thought. Hi, Tim.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Feliz Navidad.
Ah, yes. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes. It's a nice place to be.
It is.
It's snowy. It's pleasant.
It's kind of funny, though. You and I, we look a little bit more cartoonish than
Yeah, your head is
usual.
very round.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I feel like I can't quite even touch the back of my head very
Yeah,
well.
I don't
My
really
arms
want-
are a little too stubby.
I don't want to see myself in a mirror, but I'm feeling pretty good.
You look all right. You look all right.
Good. There's a little Christmas tree-ish thing out here.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of scraggly here. It looks like it could use some more lights.
Could use a little work.
I mean, the doghouse looks nice.
Yeah, the is very well decorated.
But it's fun to be here finally. Like I've always enjoyed this. I've enjoyed seeing pictures of this place. I've never actually been here myself.
Yeah,
So.
and thank you, podcast.
Thank you, podcast. You chose well this time.
It's a Christmas miracle.
I feel a lot safer here than I did in Thra.
Yes. the worst here is tripping while kicking a football.
Well, and watch out for that cat next door.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a temper, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you've got your house all decorated for Christmas yet?
As of this recording, not quite. We got back from our Thanksgiving, whatever is probably this weekend, we'll decorate it.
Ah, okay. I didn't know if the kids were like jumping up and down, clamoring to get it done.
Just we didn't get back till like Saturday evening, and then during the week. It
was a late Thanksgiving this year,
yeah.
So that makes sense.
And you're decorated?
Yeah, well, I got my tree up at home. And
Is your Mandalorian decorated?
I was able to find. Actually, was Boba Fett actually Mandalorian, or did he have just Mandalorian armor?
I think he just had Mandalorian armor.
Okay, gotta get our Star Wars trivia right here.
Because even back before all this new stuff, I just knew he had Mandalorian armor. I don't remember anyone ever claiming him to be Mandalorian, even back in the old days.
Right. But yeah, no, I've got your Boba Fett all decked out. He's got a Santa hat on with some like green and red netting stuff that I think I pulled from my Christmas tree.
It looks nice.
So yeah, he's looking quite festive, and
Yes.
he's enjoying all the extra attention that Mandalorians are getting nowadays,
Yeah.
even if he is maybe not necessarily Mandalorian himself. But
This is the way.
I have spoken.
Anyways, Tim,
Yeah.
shall we go on and get to our story school? So it's Christmas, everyone, if we haven't already made that clear.
Mm-hmm.
So we decide this year for our Christmas episode to tackle biblical adaptations.
Of course, we've done adaptations before, and we've done previously ons about adaptations before, I think. When was our adaptations episode? It was a long time ago.
That was an early one. That was like 20s, 30s?
Something like that. But
1920s or 30s. Not that long ago.
It might have been in the
Malarkey.
No, McClunky. Have you seen the things about McClunky?
I have not.
Okay, I'll tell you about that later. We're derailed already. Wow. No, adaptations was a long time ago. I think it goes all the way back to episode 8.
What? 8?
Single digits.
We've been talking about it for a while.
Yes, we have. Well, I mean, it was a pretty natural topic, I think, to pick.
Yeah.
But biblical adaptation is a certain type. You've got different expectations, different
rules in some ways.
different rules to meet. Now, again, this is where it's good to remind listeners, since we don't advertise our podcast as a Christian podcast, we just happen to be Christians that talk about stories, and this is going to be one of those episodes that delves into that and the theology of telling stories from the Bible.
Yes. And again, because, as Christians, we believe that the Bible is a distinct book versus it's just a nice collection of stories.
Yeah.
That we believe is history and that it was also inspired by God. And so there's certain, at least as Christians make adaptations or watching them, you have certain expectations that are different than if you're adapting a comic book. Mm-hmm. Or even history in some ways.
And the church has been adapting the Bible, telling the Bible stories in new, fresh ways for a very, very long time, as far back as, the early, I'm trying to think when actually, I was looking at the scene when I started. I want to say like early Middle Ages, like the 1200s. I think there was Christian art before they started doing like plays of it.
Yeah.
In some ways, though, you could even say that the Bible sometimes adapts itself.
Yeah.
Like the Psalms, we've talked about how the Psalms will recount their history in a poetic
unique
form.
way.
In
Yeah, that's
unique
very
form.
true.
So in that sense, it's sort of retelling its own stories.
So obviously it's Christmas here, and so one of the most common, and I just think is interesting, is that you just have your elementary kid shepherd
Christmas
nativity
pageant.
scene, and again, not that there's much to say about that, but it's an interesting phenomenon. But that I don't think there's anything else that kids regularly do a play of. I mean, you get Thanksgiving pilgrim things occasionally and
Yeah.
stuff, but it's kind of just part of, at least where I am from Midwestern Christian school thing you just do.
Uh-huh.
And again, most time it's very, every kid memorize some passage from the Bible. They come with the microphone, awkwardly say it too fast or too low, stumble off, and they stand around, And again, there's a lot of, like the one I watched this week that my daughter was in, was actually not a play. It was more like they would sing songs, and they'd share some verses, but it was they've moved away from the
actual dramatic.
Yeah, you walk in and there's Mary and that sort of thing.
Were they still up on stage? Or
they would go up on stage to sing and then take turns going up and saying things about.
Okay.
I like the theme was hope, and so they've varied it up now because I think it has just been done a lot.
Sure. Well, and I mean that sort of biblical adaptation, that like the church plays, the reenactments. It's almost more of a ritual than a recounting. Remember this. These are the characters. This is how it happened.
It's like a live read through the Bible.
Essentially, that's kind of what that is. And
you were in an Easter one.
Yes, I've been in
several.
I've been in 2 different Easter plays, and Easter plays are also a pretty important. Passion plays. There's this one passion play that I went to one time in Germany, in the town of Oberammergau.
Oh, nice.
Which puts on this passion play once every 10 years.
Wow.
It's this huge production that it basically took the entire day. Essentially, you break for lunch.
Wow.
In the middle of it. I think they've been doing it for some 100 years or something like that.
So 10 times.
Yes. I don't remember how long exactly, but it was a big to do. I want to say this was the year. Yeah, I think it was the year 2000 when I went. So it must be all the.
So next year.
Yeah, next year they're probably doing it again. So.
Nice. So anyways, I guess I just want to get those out of the way because it's a staple of, in many ways, church life. I know down in Brazil they do plays like that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a living parable. It's a way of acting out things that you believe that you think really happened in history.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I say the kids' pageant of it is almost like ritual, but some of these, like the Easter musicals or what have you, they still do explore ideas. There's definitely still an art to it. It's not just reciting scripture.
Yeah, the more professional they get, the more it's still very deeply anchored to scripture, but they expand upon some of the human elements or some of the themes or whatever.
Especially if it's a musical, they're making it may become more worshipful at times. The one that they do at First Assembly in Fort Wayne is certainly like that.
Talking adaptations been part of. So you helped film the Revelation dance thing.
Yeah, I did film a Revelation dance recital, I guess. There's a local dance ministry that does a big production at the end of each year. The year before that, they had done a whole biblical story, and then Revelation was just the last dance or something. But one year, I think this was in 2016. Yeah, I filmed. The Revelation was their whole recital, and it was really cool, and it actually worked really well because Revelation is such a kind of abstract book in a lot of ways. The story is very impressionistic in places, and dance actually turned out to be I would not have expected this, but it turned out to be since dance, that kind of almost interpretive dance kind of stuff is abstract by its nature. Well, it flowed really well. And one of the smartest things I thought they did about it is they didn't go into any interpretations of the book of Revelation. Which is good because that's a whole can of worms. But they just presented the story just going strictly off what the actual words said. And it was interesting and really got you in the mindset of this is going to be a big deal. Yeah. And it was a cool artistic expression of it. And I think some of the best, obviously any visual adaptation, it's important for us because it helps us visualize what sometimes, the Bible is a great work of literature.
But it's written in a specific style that doesn't always connect as in the same ways that some of us connect nowadays.
Yeah, we come from a very different culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just location wise, but time wise.
And there's a lot of culture that's assumed in the Bible that you don't always know.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about these adaptations is when it's able to distill the essence of that without sacrificing any truth of it, but just expounding upon what might have this been like.
And I think it's always beneficial to have especially the more realistic adaptations, to see it realistic, because sometimes, like if you grow up in the church, they always call them Bible stories, and you hear just the kind of the safe version.
Yeah.
And then when you actually, it's like, oh wait, in real life, this would have been Mary being pregnant without being married. That'd be kind of weird and hard, and or like, oh yeah, Jesus suffered on the cross. Like,
no, he suffered.
Like Passion of the Christ is brutal, and I've seen it twice.
I've only seen it once,
and it's super rough, but I'm very thankful for it because of the what it communicates that because here's the thing: in biblical times, crucifixion was a thing people knew about. You didn't have to go around
explaining
it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like I think the most visual version of the crucifixion in the Bible is like in Psalm something or other, a prophetic psalm about Jesus being crucified. But
yeah, that's true. The actual Gospels don't describe it.
They're like, and he died, and
yeah.
So, anyways, I think there's ones that are trying to be very historical. Very, you got Passion of the Christ. You have the Nativity was pretty reasonably historical from my memory.
The movie, the
newer one.
Yeah,
I mean, 9 more it is, but
not anymore. It was earlier this decade.
Yeah.
Also, I know there's I meant to look this up. There's one adaptation. I think it's of the Gospel of Luke.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is the one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's one that actually like verbatim quotes scriptures and actually has the scripture reference on the screen.
I think I've seen a little bit of it, but I've heard of it. Yeah, I think it's Luke or John. It's probably Luke.
Yeah, I want to say Luke. I'm not entirely certain, but I think it's that one.
Well, then you got like sometimes these are used evangelistically, like the Jesus film, which are. What do you think, Tim? How much leeway should come from Christian? Should a Christian have with adapting these things?
Well, I think there's always going to be some that's just inherent due to the time because filmmaking techniques change over time, culture changes over time. We actually did this interesting experiment or exercise, I don't know what you call it, when my redemptive cinema class back at Regents, where we watched various film adaptations versions of The Last Supper.
Okay.
Back to back. And it was very interesting because it ran a different gamut. Different films emphasized different things, had different tones. I mean, I'm trying to remember how many we saw. There was like a black and white one. There was, I want to say maybe Jesus of Nazareth. Maybe it was that film, maybe it was another one, but it kind of made me feel like I was watching a moving stained glass window.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I don't think that was purposeful, but it had this very, Jesus had this very like somber look the entire time, and everything seemed to move almost in slow motion. Okay. And this is from like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Catholic funded thing done in like the 60s or 50s even. In comparison, there was a more modern 90s or early 2001s. I think it's the one actually where, is it the adaptation that's where Desmond plays Jesus?
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if it's that one or if it's another one. There's this one adaptation where Jesus is pretty cheery for most, it's an interesting choice because it portrays Jesus with an abundance of joy. Yeah. Which is an interesting interpretation. And it made it for interesting. I remember seeing that. And I think even in the Last Supper, he was very warm even rather than being somber. It's like, yes, I am leaving you. But he's like, no, the amount of love that Jesus extends to his disciples was very evident in that version. So I think it's inherent that any biblical adaptation is going to, like any art, is going to focus on different details.
And you know what? I think that's natural because if you think about it, the Gospels themselves are adaptations of what actually happened in the sense that they're not making stuff, but they're reordering or picking and choosing what they find important.
What they focus on, yeah. Matthew is all about the prophecies. Luke was more making it accessible to all peoples.
John's like, well, everything else everyone didn't cover, I will take care of that.
Yeah, basically.
No, but I think there should be a certain amount of freedom, at least in the sense of rearranging things, highlighting things. I mean, within boundaries. Mm-hmm. For someone, again, we're talking about Jesus. There's a lot of other parts of the Bible that maybe have even more leeway to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But at least for a Christian, there's certain things you can't change. Yes. That there's certain inherent theological things that should be highlight. Now, from a non-Christian point of view, it's interesting because sometimes you get things like, Jesus Christ Superstar,
Yeah.
Alexander Lloyd Webber.
I was just seeing a little bit of that. John Legend, the singer, recently has a version of that on Broadway. I don't know if it's still going or not, but just on PBS the other night, they were showing some of it, and it's in a very urban setting compared to like the original like 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like historical hippie almost is what it feels like.
And I'll admit, like, I really dig the music in that play. Like, I could quote a lot of it right now. But it's interesting when you watch it, theologically, it's very much a skeptic's view. It's very much Judas is a main character. Judas, like,
almost the protagonist.
Yeah, he's like, are you really who you say you are? Like, couldn't you have done this differently? It does a very good job of showing Jesus as man, but it doesn't actually believe Jesus is God. But I think it's interesting when a secular person does adaptations because sometimes they'll highlight stuff that you might not think of sometimes. Like, I remember it's either Oscar Wilde or the other guy around that time wrote Time Machine. What's that guy's name?
H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells or Oscar Wilde. I don't know why why they're. But one of them said, like, didn't believe in the Bible, said the main point of Jesus coming was the kingdom of God. And because it really is. And like they can still find things sometimes differently because they don't have the same. They come from outside, but they're looking at it seriously. So anyways.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think you have to take those cases carefully.
Yes.
Like, I don't agree with like the boycotting method unless they're being purposely disrespectful for it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when a secular person does a biblical adaptation, they're coming to the Bible often as like it's a source of mythology. Essentially, that's tend to be their impression of it. Which obviously, as Christians, we don't believe it's mythology; we believe it's real. But there's a different. At that point, it becomes like they should adapt it just like you would adapt other things with respect to a source material, even if they're not going to be as beholden to it.
Did you watch the Exodus one that Ridley Scott did?
I have not.
I have not either. I heard that he made some interesting choices about the burning bush and stuff like that. I don't remember.
I mean, and there's been a lot of those out there. I mean,
they had the Noah one. Someone did.
Yeah, that was one I was thinking. I remember. I think that was when I was in high school. That Noah's Ark thing. Oh no, this is. Oh, you're talking about.
Are you talking about the TV movie Noah's Ark?
Yeah, that NBC thing. Yeah.
Oh, that was so horrible.
Yes, exactly. Like, there's a case where like they just like mix. I think they combine Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah with Noah.
Like, there's the Ark, there's Sodom and Gomorrah, then there's the Ark. And then there's pirates. And then like Lot's hanging out with the pirate. It's like, it was completely insane. It was ridiculous.
It was dumb. I'm pretty sure we stopped watching at some point, like Noah's conversation with God. God was like talking as if he hadn't really made up his mind about how he was going to, what the rules were going to be. And they were like, what? That's stupid. So there's a case where it's an adaptation. Well, you're not treating the source material with respect.
No, adaptation is treated with respect. Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
Like, secular thing, but I remember them, from my understanding, they had asked a lot of scholars how this would happen, and you could have some beefs with little bits here and there, but generally,
I mean, they amped up the idea of Moses and the Pharaoh having grown up together more than is strictly in the biblical narrative, but it's not against the biblical narrative, so it's an interesting idea.
And again, as Christians coming to these things, you always say, like anything else, the Bible's the fact, and then you judge it. Like, it still might be entertaining. It might just be helpful even in some ways.
Did you ever see The Last Temptation of Christ?
I have never seen that one, no.
I saw this in undergrad at some point, and that's one of those movies that had a lot of protests, came out like early 80s, I think.
Yes.
So it had a lot of pushback from the church. But the movie does, at the outset, like there's a title card that says at the very beginning, this is not an adaptation of the biblical narrative. This is an artistic exploration of Jesus' story. So when they come out with that sort of disclaimer, I think the church in some ways does a disservice in not hearing the artist out. I mean, that's a Scorsese movie. And the actual Last Temptation of Christ is, you see during the crucifixion scene, Jesus comes off the cross and then tries to like have his followers go along with that for a period of time. And then, his movement tries to continue going forward. But at some point it starts falling apart. And then eventually you come to realize, oh, Jesus did not actually get off the cross. This is all kind of in his head sort of moment.
Okay.
Like, well, exploring the ramifications of what would happen if he did get off the cross. So it was an interesting exploration. And yeah, it felt wrong in a lot of ways to watch that sort of story unfold. But yeah, when you see someone exploring these ideas in an interesting, and I would say with artistic integrity, from where Martin Scorsese was, this was something he genuinely wanted to explore. And like, I remember one scene that like from earlier in the movie that resonated as accurate. There's a scene where Jesus is explaining something to one of his disciples, and Jesus asks, "Do you understand?" And the disciple starts to nod, and then slowly like shakes his head, "No." And like, I think all of us, reading sometimes Jesus' words, be like, "Lord, I don't get it."
Yeah. So yeah, it's a tricky thing because you can't really expect non-Christians to treat Jesus as Christians do. Obviously we don't like him to be insulted or degraded, but yeah, it's an interesting thing as a viewer or a reader because he is going to be regularly misunderstood and insulted by non-Christians anyway. That's sort of the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was reading or listening to Philippians not too long ago, and Paul talks about how there are some people near where he was that would preach the gospel, but for wrong reasons. But Paul's like, I don't really care as long as the gospel gets preached.
Yeah.
Which there's something to that. And like, if the non-Christians if they're telling it in an honest way, I don't want to denigrate them. Obviously, I want to say, okay, well, this is what I agree with. Yep. This is what I disagree with, but it's not worth running that down.
So moving on from strict adaptations, there also is a whole kind of collection of movies, books around the Bible. It's not quite the same adaptation, but it's an interesting thing that authors do sometimes because they feel like they can't change much of the actual story because they respect it, but they still want to do something
in the same setting.
With concurrent or related.
Like, this is something that took place at the same time.
You got Ben-Hur, The Robe.
In more recent years, I've talked about my respect for the movie Risen.
I was thinking about that one.
Which is about a centurion investigating after Jesus has been resurrected and basically eventually meeting Jesus himself, which is a super interesting scene. Not only that when he first like encounters Jesus face to face, but later on there's this conversation. And it's like, part of you is like, this is really odd having like this fictional dialogue with Jesus. Yet at the same time, the story wouldn't be complete if you didn't have it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a super interesting movie that I respect a lot of their choices there.
I think in those cases, really because the creator wants to work through the ramifications of, again, in these cases, the crucifixion, resurrection, but you have a little more leeway with characters, with responses, if you can move away from what's written, so you can intersect.
It's a little easier for people who aren't artists themselves to understand what they're trying to do. If they're not like, well, you didn't tell exactly how because even Prince of Egypt has some detractors that'd be like, that's not how it really happened. Put their hands on their hips and shake their head. But it's a little easier for people, and it's a little easier to fend off those sorts of accusations if it's like, well, we're telling a story that's kind of next to it.
Yeah.
And they get that a little bit easier.
So because we've been talking a lot about the Nativity story and then the crucifixion. What other stories do we have that have been told routinely, or at least a couple times? I mean, you have like the Bible miniseries kind of went through the Old Testament. I saw bits and pieces of that, and it was interesting.
Yeah, I would like to see a lot more. I mean,
and there's 10 Commandments.
Yeah, 10 Commandments. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the other stuff, most of our biblical adaptations, we're talking about like Christian media, essentially.
Superbook.
Yes. I was not expecting you that. Yes, Superbook was great. I mean, that's a whole genre of stories where you send kids from modern times back to that. Adventures in Odyssey did a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Did you see the Hanna-Barbera one where the archaeologists? Yeah. Those were great.
Yeah, those are fun too. Those were mostly Old Testament stories where they had kids going back in time and hanging out with Samson and
and those are interesting because then you do the story as you want, but you have this kind of running commentary.
Yes. I think that the running commentary was a popular thing, I think, with kids media for a while.
I mean, even VeggieTales does.
VeggieTales.
I mean, they do a lot of adaptations. They've done Esther, and they've done a lot of Bible stories actually. Jonah.
Well, sometimes they'll put it in completely different garb. Like
and
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is Rack, Shack, and Benny.
And it's interesting because what they do is take the kind of and again, like I'll do this sometimes. And there's certain people don't do as much with the crucifixion because that's the center of everything. But with a lot of other stuff, people don't mind doing kind of a humorous version because it's a good way to get to the point.
Yeah, you can throw a lot of jokes in the midst of like the actual storytelling, and it keeps kids' attention really easy, and it makes it a lot fun, and it brings out the humor of like, really, Balaam, you're gonna have your donkey talking to you. Like you can't get this idea through your thick skull. Like, this is not what God wants you to do.
And I think it's a way of helping, rehearse these stories. And I think the danger sometimes with the kid ones is that it becomes just stories.
Yeah.
Fun stories. But like we always have, people do skits, and you got, Bill Cosby doing the what's a cubit, for Noah's Ark
Noah,
sort of stuff. Because there's a lot of strange cultural things that are easy for, as you're translating it, you can poke fun at all the stuff that is
like
strange.
This is a crazy name.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, this is a little off topic, but I've been told that Esther, the book of Esther, Jews used to kind of like do little plays all and like hiss at Haman and like cheer when Mordecai would show up, and like it would be like kind of like we do with our nativity for their what's the holiday? Not Purim, it was, but that's
Purim.
But only that what they still call it? That's what it was called back then.
I don't remember.
Okay. But yeah, I've been told that it was this whole sort of play thing they would do. And
I can totally see that. I mean, like Esther feels like, especially like when Haman gets caught, it's like a comedy of errors. Like one thing piles another after I want to say poor guy, but he totally had it coming.
And so I think Adaptations has a way of helping us reconnect to these things that are important, but you put it in a new garb so that you remember what's important about it at its best.
Yeah. Now, you've done speaking of nativities, Christmas, you've done a fair number of these for your youth.
Things now or something like that.
And you've put it in like all kinds of different garb.
Yeah, I've done science fiction. That was fun. Where, Jesus was basically like an invasion on this planet controlled by, this demon. And very darkly, like people like martyrs and stuff. Yeah, that was fun. Did time travel. Where the guy went, then we would jump through time as if Jesus hadn't been born, how it changed all the old Bible stories and stuff.
You did a podcast series. That was last year? Wasn't it?
And we need to link again because we put it back out.
Sure.
This year,
on back out. Was it not?
No, but I mean, like on the church webpage and stuff, so you can just listen there.
Yeah.
Where we basically did kind of a
99% invisible
for like research, like basically because Luke talks about, hey, I'd research this and report it to you when he writes the books. I'm like, oh, we're just going to do this, but as if you research it as a podcast.
It's called From the Beginning.
From the beginning, because Luke says, I've looked at everything from the beginning, etc.
Nice.
And it's fun. I think it worked decently well. Mm-hmm. It has some commercials in it, which are interesting.
I forgot about that.
But again, because my goal writing these Christmas plays for the kids generally are how can I make this Christmas nativity story, which has been, if they grew up in the Christian church, kind of just old hat, how do we make them remember how amazing it actually is? And adapting it is a way to pull out the nuggets in a different way. Not because you're saying that's not how it actually happened, but just because it's like most stories. You escape to this so that when you come back, you see things differently.
Yeah.
To me, that's one of the best uses of adaptations, especially in this sort of setting.
And it is very important this time of year because Christmas and Advent is it's a powerful tool to really get us back into the mode of wonder of like this amazing thing that God has given us. And
just the love and the incarnation's insane.
Yeah.
But we just like, oh yeah, it's a baby. And you're like, no, it is, but it's far deeper than that.
It's what it all means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we've got.
Yeah. I think it's a special tool, and I'm glad that we get a whole holiday season to enjoy it.
Yeah. All right, Tim. Oh, I guess I'll do soundtrack. All right, so for my soundtrack, I decided to pick something sort of vaguely religious sounding because, we're talking all these adaptations and everything. This is from the Final Fantasy 1. We have not remixed.
Whoa.
I know.
No,
old school.
Our first Final Fantasy 1, which is when it's not even called Final Fantasy 1, just Final Fantasy.
It was going to be the Final Fantasy until it wasn't.
Yeah, until they decided, oh, this is successful. Let's make more of these.
It's remixed from the church theme because you used to have to go to a church to go like resurrect your friends and stuff.
Heal
people. It's remixed by Jordi Francis and Shadow Dreamer. It's called Viva Revenis. It sounds vaguely Latin. It's not. It's Esperanto, which is that made-up language I mean, purposefully made up.
Yeah.
That they thought would be universal.
Was Latin not a made-up language? I thought it was for a time, but apparently not.
I think it was just what the Romans talked.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay, fair enough.
I think. Anyways, enjoy.
Vivore veno, Spiritui Sancta, done ni forton, cae esperon, qui perdiet, vidos la lumon, cae secula dia, fojore veno, Vivore veno, Spiritui Sancta, done anni forton, cae esperon, qui perdiet, vidos la lumon, cae secula dia, fojore
And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that vaguely religious sounding song.
Vaguely spiritual,
Very, yeah.
vaguely Latin.
So you could go in a vaguely religious adaptation. But
Not to be too specific about it.
no, just if something would happen that would be kind of like Christmassy. No, okay. Anyways, so next we're going to go to What If? All right, so for What If today, we thought we'd tackle, since we're talking about biblical adaptations, what if certain stories that have not been covered or very lightly covered were adapted? And I think these could both be somewhat serious adaptations and then also just ridiculous. You know, we can do musicals, we can do cartoons,
Okay.
we can do whatever.
Well, I know we've said not too long ago that both of us would really love to see like a serious mini-series done on the life of David.
Oh man, I want to do 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings. I do the whole gamut.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And here's the thing: it needs to be gritty in the sense not like overly violent, but it needs to be realistic. And again, I don't know how you do this balance, but it needs to be, be David's political. I'm doing Bible study on Sunday morning with the youth of 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 2, like Solomon kills like 4 people.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay, Joab, you're dead.
Yeah. There's some violent stuff in some of the King's books, like Jezebel getting tossed out the window and then eaten up by dogs.
And I think, like I told the youth this, like part of the reason I want to do this book is to show you that like God's working in the politics and the everyday stuff. And so what I would love to see is these things that both treat these characters honestly and realistically, but also don't negate the thread of God working through these people and these sometimes very fallen people, especially in some of the kings.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that would be great. That could be a real political thriller, a period piece political thriller, which I think would be interesting. Like that's one of the other things that was particularly interesting to me about Risen is that it wasn't just a Bible story. It was also like a Bible story procedural, like a Bible story detective story, which I'd never seen before. It'd be interesting to see more biblical adaptations pull elements because I mean that stuff is in the Bible.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if you really like dial into that aspect of some of these stories, it could be cool to see. Yeah, bring out the political nature of the. I mean, heck, I've never watched Game of Thrones, but a lot of the scuttlebutt about that is just about the political machinations
Yeah.
and the interplay and dealings and things like
There's
that.
stuff like that going on in Kings and Samuel.
Oh,
It
yeah.
Which reminds me, you never watched Kings, did you? The TV show that was on for like a season? It was like modern day, but it was basically David and Saul.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty interesting. I mean, it was an interesting, again, adaptation.
But in a different setting.
Yeah, it
so
was
different
modernized. I mean,
circumstances.
it was more inspired by than,
Okay.
but it had some interesting stuff going down. And that makes me think you could do this and make it realistic. I mean, the hardest thing would be in an adaptation like that, either people would move it too safe or leave the deeply religious stuff out of it. And you
Yeah.
have to, there is that tension that you need to keep.
Yeah, you have to find the right balance. You have to stay true to the word, but also explore the ramifications of who these people were.
And again, you have a lot of room because there's a lot of stuff that's not said that you could
Oh, sure.
play
Yeah.
with
Expound
intelligently.
upon. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's at least a serious what if. I'd watch that. Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever you want. More Netflix.
Yeah, that would not be a Disney Plus
No,
thing. No,
no.
that's a Netflix / Hulu sort
Yeah,
of.
like I don't want
location.
like an M. I want like a PG-13. Like
Yeah.
like Joab's gonna kill people. That's what Joab does.
Yeah.
But
So, okay, kind of on the medium skew of seriosity,
seriosity, nice.
making up words today. What do we do a anime version of the Book of Judges?
Oh man, he's like, oh man, that
So-
would be.
So like that is where you can get away with like all the super violent scenes that are in the Bible, but like because the anime tends to be a bit more stylized, a little bit more abstract, you can get away with some of the stuff that would be I wouldn't actually want to see in live action. But
Yeah, but couldn't you see Samson like the scrolling the stuff in the background? He's like with his jawbone, and he just starts killing people. And
oh man,
I'm not sure if that's disrespectful or awesome, but
but I mean, you read the Book of Judges for like the brutal violence factor. Like you want
like the Fat King, like he just stabbed Roll
exactly
through the
like
gut.
as a middle schooler, you always want to like let's go read the story of Jehu. Like,
Yeah. Oh man.
he stabbed him all the way through, and like the fat swallowed up the hilt.
Well,
That's cool.
It reminds me of the Action Bible. You read the Action, like the comic book Bible.
I've seen some
Theo
of that.
has that, but anime would be just great on it. You'd have all these like. Could you just imagine like the intro music and the like the all the judges like twirling around and doing poses and like Deborah like pulling Barak by his thing.
Jail stabbing the guy through the head with
Yeah.
a tent peg. Now the tricky thing about all this is that to make all the judges feel like superheroes, where you have stories like Gideon, where Gideon's like cowering in his tent, and it's very obvious that Gideon did not win his victory by himself. It was definitely God ordained.
See, Gideon kind of like Trigon, where he's always like all down, and then he's always like love and peace, But you have like this bipolar nature, where it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you do it. Like scenes would be good as an actual series, be a little rough to do in a way that would be
Biblically honest.
biblically honest. Yeah, like it's fun. Like doing some parody, like short version would be hilarious.
Yes.
Like I want to see the anime intro now. But like, do you do the end of Judges? Does anyone want to see that?
Okay, maybe
Like,
not.
no, there are some really dark anime out there.
There are some, but that's not really the kind of stuff I go for. Yeah, I would be okay with skipping the last. What was it,
Just
the
end
last-
with Samson.
Yeah, is Samson the last judge before we get to the
I think
crazy
so.
like
Let's cut up this concubine.
the murder
Mail delivery.
spree? Oh gosh.
It's. I mean, Judges is taken seriously is super dark.
Yeah.
I mean, even the good guys in Judges are kind of messed up.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that Israel kept going through the same problems over and over, never learning their lesson.
Yeah. You know what? We need like I don't know what you take, but it seems like there should be some sort of The storyteller from Jim Henson's Storyteller, him doing some sort of adaptation.
Ooh, that could be
He
cool.
did good myths and stuff. He could do sort of that style that would be
great. That kind of like, it's based in the oral tradition, but you go from the storyteller telling the story to the scenes of it happening.
some of the wisdom stuff.
Yeah.
Like you tell Job that way.
Oh, that could be interesting. That would be a really interesting style for Job. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, do it, Tim. What else? You could do Esther that way.
You could do Esther that way. Ruth. You could do Ruth almost that way.
I mean, you could probably do Judges that way too. But
Well,
I like
yeah.
the anime better. So.
Yeah. Although Ruth, I mean, some storyteller stuff was romantic. So
You could do Ruth like Hallmark.
yes,
Like just time for Christmas.
I'm kind of picturing the like Ruth Boaz. Like, there's got to be some great tagline, like, when you lay at his feet, your world will change forever.
Oh boy. No, but like actually, like semi-serious, and I'm sure this has been done. I'm sure a good semi-serious, semi-romantic romance version of Ruth has been done somewhere that I have not seen. But you could certainly do it, and you could do the Hallmark version too. But
Did your church have, there was this animated series that did a lot of Bible stories. It did some Old Testament stuff that hasn't been done quite as much. But I can't think of what it was. It was made by Ness Entertainment. I remember the director was Richard Rich, which I always think is like Richie Rich, but
now it doesn't sound familiar.
okay. I can't think of what the name of the series was, but it did some story. I remember it did Ruth and it did Esther and it did some of these Old Testament ones that I hadn't seen a lot of coverage for. But.
Speaking of, I should brought this up at Story School. Have you seen One Night with a King?
Oh yes, yeah.
That's the Esther, like based on a novel, and then they did the movie. Like my wife really enjoyed that one. It was
I think I did.
very interesting adaptation. Like
Pretty
honest.
realistic looking, yeah. That was a good adaptation. I don't have much more to say about it because it's been a while. But
I just had forgotten that they had actually done a kind of a Hollywood level Esther before. Okay, what else?
a comedic version of Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law.
No, here's what I think. You know how Muppets used to do the fairy tales, like fairy tale,
like on the Muppet Show, or
no, like didn't they have a whole like fairy tale? Not like a
that was like a direct to VHS thing,
okay,
like the
Anyways,
Muppets Classic
they,
Theater.
They just didn't do all the parables.
Oh, okay,
Muppets doing the parables would be pretty great.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, I how much that's good, I don't know, but I can see, Prodigal Son. It's Gonzo because he's a weirdo.
It'd be interesting what sort of, I'd have to really explore what you bring to those characters to do.
Like the with the talents, you could have the one counting the talents out when he comes back.
10 talents.
Give him 10 more. So, yeah.
That's pushing that a little far, I think.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, parables, that seems like that's a good, I wouldn't be surprised if VeggieTales has tackled some of those and did some interesting, that's the sort of thing that
It's safe to do because they're making a point and not.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a spoof. It's a retelling in a humorous fashion. I guess that's the better way to put it.
So, Fantasia, okay?
Okay.
Collection of your favorite psalms.
Ooh, that's a neat idea. I mean, that would be a really interesting thing because, it's always interesting to hear psalms put to modern music, and music in general. But then you take that music and then you animate Fantasia style to it. I'd be down for that.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea.
I said it kind of joking, but I like it now.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Although you could do the same thing with the Book of Ezekiel.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, that could be super trippy.
Oh man, Ezekiel should be an anime. That's what I'm saying.
The Valley of the Dry Bones.
Oh, this cherubim, the living creatures. Actually, Ezekiel could also be like some super artsy
avant-garde sort of
thing.
Thing. It practically is already.
It really, Ezekiel is weird. I mean, the prophets are all kind of weird. Ezekiel had the worst job. I mean, all right, God. He's like, I mean, when you're talking to God, please, I'll do whatever, but I don't want to cook my food over dung, human excrement. I mean, when that's the conversation you're having, God's asking you some weird stuff.
Yeah. It's
horrible stuff. Like, okay, Job, so and so's going to die, or I think. Who is it, his wife? Someone dies, and he's like, you can't mourn for them.
It wasn't Job, no.
I mean Ezekiel.
Oh, is it Ezekiel?
Like some close person dies to him, and it's like
you're not allowed to mourn
because he was he was a living parable,
Yeah.
basically, constantly.
What a weird calling.
No other prophet has to live in such a active way, living out God's parables.
Kind of makes you wonder, maybe that actually was Ezekiel's method of creativity. He was like an avant-garde kind of artist before there was such a thing. And God was like, okay, that's the way we're going to do it.
Yep.
You never know.
He's like, lay on your side for 180 days and stare at this pan and then build up. And then like, doesn't he like build a little like thing and knock down this wall? Like he just constantly like worked it out in real life. It was very interesting.
The visual demonstration prophet.
Yep, basically.
So yeah, I don't think I've ever seen an adaptation of that.
I think I could see avant-garde, or what was our first version?
A Fantasia style. Sort of
Either
thing.
way, we could do it.
Yeah,
I could really
animation.
see an avant-garde version though. Like give it to Christopher Nolan, so we can like jump around time and stuff.
Oh wow, that would be interesting.
No, Nolan has to do Revelation.
Yeah, okay. That could be.
Don't do it. No,
No, not really.
No one needs to do Revelation, is it? I mean, the dance that you watch, it seems like about the best way to do it.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's true. You could do that sort of thing. Well, I mean, the nice thing about doing it in the dance setting was because it was so abstract, you didn't think about like backgrounds and stuff.
Yep.
Like, how would you even set? Most people probably just put it in the clouds, and that would just reinforce the like heaven is just floating up on clouds stereotype.
See, if you did Revelation as a visual thing, you need to don't do it this way. That old Lord of the Rings movie. Have you seen it?
Oh gosh.
With that, like the rotoscope or whatever they were doing.
Yeah, no. No.
I can go see the red background and the shapes moving slow. And
Ugh, that's such a weird movie.
it is a weird movie. It's way, way too long.
Yeah.
What Bible sort have we not taken? We need a musical of some sort.
A musical. Okay. They've already done Joseph.
They've done Joseph. Yep. I mean, I'm sure they have some sort of Genesis out there.
Well, I was gonna say something really dark like Job, but I showed you that on that Michael Card album.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Card has an album of going through the Old Testament, and he actually has this whole suite on Job, which really distills the story down superbly well.
Oh, he do it great for a musical, like some sort of. It had to be like a Les Mis, like all.
You mean Job?
Yeah, Job. It could be a rock opera.
It could be. I mean, Job is all about like these deep explorations.
Actually, it
and
would work really well. If it doesn't exist, it probably exists in some niche somewhere.
Could
Niche.
be.
But I'd watch that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it is in the book of poetry, so you could see how it could translate to song really well.
And there's lots of drama in it. And
Okay,
that'd be cool.
Probably a book of poetry that should not be adapted though would be the Song of Solomon.
Yes, let's not.
Let's just let's just keep that as a book.
Yeah, we'll keep that as a book. The other one, Ecclesiastes. What do we do with Ecclesiastes?
Well, Ecclesiastes doesn't really have a story, so I don't know.
You could make it into a story, though, couldn't you?
Okay, make it a story about Solomon basically being.
Maybe
I mean, I feel like Ecclesiastes would just be a part of the
king.
the king's season. Like, how would
man,
how do you break up the Samuel and King story? You would have like the first season is Samuel and Saul.
Yeah.
The second season is David. Would it be all David, or would you need multiple seasons for David?
I think you'd have to have a season of just David in the desert before he's king.
Okay.
And then you had to have David.
Second season is David pre-king, and then third season is David as king.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could pull a couple episodes out with the whole Absalom thing, though. I mean, you could have a whole season of David up through Bathsheba, and then all the whole season like Fallout, maybe, depending on how detailed you get.
Yeah, I guess
You wouldn't have to.
It depends on you. That's true. There's different ways you could do it depending on how long you want to
But then-
extend the stories.
Then you have Solomon. I mean,
Yeah, Solomon would be his own season.
yeah, and then you start having 2-3 episodes.
Like Elijah and Ahab and Jezebel. That would be almost.
Oh,
that
that's
could
a
almost
great
be a whole season.
Oh
by
man,
itself.
it'd be so great. Be dark.
Yeah.
Be darker than most people think it should. I mean, some people is probably like, oh man, yeah, this is something else.
Yeah.
So okay, so
But Ecclesiastes would be like an episode or two of the Solomon season, I think.
yeah, it'd be like a really unique episode kind. Like when Battlefield when they have the intersections real time. You have a really
The insular episodes where we don't see any of the other characters.
it's just him and it's just him
in a
through time
room.
and,
Yeah, something like that.
and dream sequences or something or.
Yep, I can see that.
I'd like that.
Although you could also have some like montages of him like surveying over all that he has built.
Yeah,
and
I think it
then-
would be a very montage-ish thing.
inner dialogue episode.
Dunkirk.
It could be really cool though.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think there's a lot of possibility to bring art to biblical stories in order to raise up certain ideas in a way that maybe, yeah. Anyways, we already said that, but just think of Solomon doing that. I'm like, man, that would be good. Okay, we need something for Leviticus.
Do we?
Yes.
Again, that's not a narrative though. For most of Leviticus is giving the law.
Yeah, but okay, I'm gonna think outside the box here. Okay, here's what you do. So just bring a little adaptation to it. It's like a visual, like a comic booky, like how-to manual.
Okay.
So it's not narrative, but it's like how to be holy.
Or maybe like a YouTube channel. Like,
Oh, I love that. Like a series of how-to videos.
yeah. Or my first thought was originally podcast, like talk show, but then like, when you said how to, it's like, okay, then there's more of like a YouTube thing of
Actually, that could be really effective as a understanding Leviticus. Really, I mean, you could put-
explanation, like what was the purpose of these rules?
like, or
Why
even-
was this helpful? Because there's certain things about like some of Leviticus feels very arbitrary. It's like, why did God have people do
Yeah.
this? But like some of it, I've also heard that like, why couldn't they eat pork?
Yeah.
But I guess one theory I've heard is that like there's a certain way you have to preserve or prepare pork that they may not have realized
Yeah.
early on that. So it was probably protective.
But I could see
rule.
either straight up or kind of a tongue-in-cheek how-to Leviticus, but while also bringing out that sort of like because the point of Leviticus is that like you're not holy, like to come before God, there's got to be blood. Mm-hmm. Like you can't read Leviticus and not feel like I'd be sacrificing animals like all the time.
Yeah.
How
How did animals live long enough to be sacrificed?
And the thing is,
I wonder.
they were probably. I mean, obviously, I think people brought just for the very distinct sins, but give you that sense that just.
Yeah.
I've always thought it'd be not that I would actually do this for like Easter, like bring some like if you brought an animal and sacrificed it for Easter.
It would be a very visual demonstration, but you'd also have like people really upset at you.
People would be real upset, but I'm like, before Jesus, like the temple was just bloody all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, a little random.
But then again, it wouldn't have been quite. I mean, I'm sure it was shocking in a sense, but at the same time, people didn't just go to the grocery store to buy their meat those days.
No, I know. I think for us, sometimes that sort of shock would be interesting.
Yeah.
And not that we really want it, but talking about it is almost enough. I read today that Bonhoeffer said that every sermon needs a shock of heresy. I guess what he meant was you say a truth in a shocking way to get people to see it suddenly like, oh,
Wait,
like
what?
that.
Yeah.
Sorry, random.
It's a good insight.
So we've covered most of the Bible. I mean, you got Paul. Paul needs a good.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the series AD?
Was the same people did the Bible thing? I've seen
I'm not sure.
I've seen part of some sort of Paul series.
Well, I don't know if that's the one or not. I don't. Well.
What Burnett? Was it Burnett's?
Oh, more modern. No, I'm thinking of one. The one I'm thinking of was like from the 90s, I think.
Oh no, I've not seen that then.
Okay, but I mean, it is a nice story about the Book of Acts, basically.
Okay, Acts could use. I mean, you could always do a very serious.
Yeah,
Drama of Acts.
You could certainly go into even more detail with the rise of the church and the. I mean, you could do an entire episode on just like the Jerusalem Convention.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of amazed by some of what the early church did in terms of like setting the stage for Christendom for centuries.
The fact that
after.
they didn't require it, you're like, wow, you just like didn't require anything.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The fact that they understood that this is where God was leading everyone. Yeah, it is pretty. Well, it would have been an amazing time. It'd be fascinating. To do a full series on that.
And then I think Paul can always use more.
Oh yeah,
Stuff.
Yeah, more stuff with Paul.
Because more time, I mean, they've often kept Paul very, because we don't know a lot of it in between the letters and stuff. So I've not seen a lot of stuff that tries to interpolate. Is that the right word?
It is a word, yes.
It is a word. But if you had the right people, I think you could do even more. I mean, obviously you had to say, look, this is not Bible. This is our interpretation for
Right.
stuff. But he's a fascinating character.
And I'm sure there's there's probably been, I didn't think about that. I think the people who did do the Bible did a lot more New Testament stuff
They
later
did-
on.
Yeah, I'd watch some
I
of
can't
that.
think of what it's called though.
Maybe just part of the Bible still and just kept going.
Well, maybe. But I know I need to watch a lot more of that. And I'd be super curious, listeners, if there are some adaptations that in both halves of this episode that we haven't talked about that you
Yeah, I'm
think
sure
we
there's
should.
lots of books that I have not. I know they
Oh,
have.
sure.
Like Francine Rivers wrote a adaptation. Well, it was based on Hosea.
Okay.
About he has to marry the prostitute. But there's some sort of book. I think it's modernized and everything.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about visual stuff. But I'm sure that
there's tons of that book
there's-
sort of stuff.
There's a lot of different novels.
I
that
think we're
you
talking
could-
visual just because that's where it's been done, at least in the big scale.
Yeah.
Outside a little Christian.
Christian publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of Christian authors have done biblical adaptation at one point or another. Even Ted Decker has done some, hasn't
Yeah,
he?
he did kind of a like crossing Jesus. So I think almost everything Jesus says is from the Bible, but there's characters not from the Bible interacting, interweaving,
Okay.
sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, in books, it's probably almost most of the sort. Now, again, I'm not sure I've seen a good Samuel King's one. I mean, I think there are some about David.
Yeah.
I think there's a secular one called,
And there's probably some books about Esther and,
yeah. Well, we know
and
there's at least one.
Joseph. Oh, yeah. You said, the one. Okay.
And Joseph, yeah. And like, I not read it, it's secular version. The Red Tent is about Dinah,
Dinah?
like Jacob's daughter.
Wow. I don't even remember her.
Like she gets raped by Shechem.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I think it's a secular. I've not read it, but
Okay. I can see that.
so there are people doing things. I think that yeah. Anyways, but there's always more possibilities. I think,
There's always more possibilities.
and things like the reason we have adaptation half the time because we always need to be made new for the next generation.
Now, have you had any ideas for Christmas or Easter adaptations for plays that you have not actually tried yet? Or have you run the gamut of all your initial ideas for those?
There's not so much adaptation as I can't figure out how to do it. I want to do a Christmas one on the humiliation of God. That's kind of the theological term from my understanding of that Jesus humbled himself to become a man,
Okay.
to be born as. I really want to make some sort of story that can really pull out that aspect of it. But I can't figure out the best way to do it in a way that will communicate it without just saying it. Mm-hmm. The idea that what the Philippians says, and so being found in the form of a man, he found, I can't quote it, but
Yeah.
Philippians 2. I can't figure out a good way to do it.
Interesting.
Other than that, no. I mean, Easter, I haven't touched except
You did this.
Saturday.
Yeah. We talked about that from the play episode
Yeah.
podcast.
Because it's hard to do that. You got to be just more. I have thought about doing I had thought about one time doing a news report style of Easter. Like people reacting to as if it was a modern day and it was on the news and stuff like that.
That could be cool.
I haven't done that. I've done a Christmas news one style before, but yeah. Just to me, it's always about trying to find what's the kernel you want to bring out from this story, see what works. So, all right. Well, that's our different what if.
Yes.
Not quite as insane as sometimes.
A little bit more realistic. I mean, we had a few out there ideas. I mean, I do like the idea of the Psalms as Fantasia and the Book of Job as a rock opera.
Let's do the rock opera.
That sounds promising. Get Andrew Lloyd Webber on that.
Comes in the night. Okay. Well, Tim, we'll bow out, and then you have a soundtrack for us. But first, where can they find us?
They can find all of our episodes at derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify.
Spotify. And then you can join us for our side podcast, The Weekly Hijack, where we're finishing up Babylon 5.
Yes. Season 5, getting late in Season 5 as the date of this release. If you haven't seen the show, it's available on Amazon Prime. Go check it out, and then you can listen through all the episodes along with us as you finish each one. Just be sure if it's your first time watching the show, skip the spoiler section at the end.
Yes. All right, Tim, what's our soundtrack?
Okay, for soundtrack today, I went to Overclock Remix does these Christmas albums every year that sometimes they are game music, sometimes not. The nice thing about these Overclock Christmas albums is that they don't have to follow all the same. They have pretty strict guidelines for what constitutes an Overclock remix. But these Christmas albums tend to be more for fun. And this song is it's by Cyril the Wolf, And it's a metal version of What Child Is This? That's a very different adaptation.
Yes.
This won't be for everyone, of course, because it's metal. But I thought it was interesting. And the actual name of the way he says it in this remix is, What Child Is This? is in capital letters there. So anyway, like I said, it will be for everyone, but I hope you will enjoy it nevertheless.
Well, I'll have to listen to it later because some of the kids are coming out and they're going to sing here.
Oh yeah,
So,
wow, they've really improved that tree. I'm
I
not
know,
sure
it's nice.
they added branches to it, and it's
I
like
don't know how they did that.
that's amazing. Is that a dog?
But yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, he won first place.
He's got a really big nose.
Yeah, some dogs do.
That's okay. He seems like a good dog.
Yeah,
A
nice
fun-
dog.
a fun
We'll
dog.
Go pet him.
Yes. Hopefully he won't bite us.
Yeah, hopefully not. We'll bring him food. He won't.
That's probably true. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes. Well, this has been Nick.
And this is Tim.
Adios.
Feliz Navidad.
What child is this who lay to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping. This is Christ the King, who shepherds God and angels sing. This to bring in love the babe, the Son of Mary. Why lies he in such mean estate, where ox and ass are fading? Good Christians here, for sinners here, the silent word is pleasing. Bells shall pierce him through, the lost be born for me, for you. Oh, word made flesh, the babe, the Son of Mary. Bring him incense, gold, and myrrh, peasant king, you own him, the King of Kings.